So our group presentation is going to be over the Noble Eightfold Paths. I'm Amber Hernandez and my partner Kim Ha. We're going to talk about how each of these paths lead to nirvana and how Buddhists are able to attain these steps in order to reach that higher state of mind. An overview of one of the main practices in Buddhism is the Noble Eightfold Paths. Followed by the Four Noble Truths, it is the cessation of suffering and the removal of desires. And they are divided into three categories. Morality is right speech, right action, right livelihood. Meditation is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Right view and right thought are in the category of the cultivation of insight. So success in all eight paths lead to nirvana. And once nirvana is reached, the cycle of rebirth is broken. And the term for that is samsara. So samsara is something that Buddhists would all want to avoid because they want to reach nirvana. So in order for you to have the cycle to be broken, you have to have really good karma. And versus if you have really bad karma, you're just only going to be stuck in that same cycle over and over. And each person is different in regards to their karma. So Buddhists are also at different levels than one another. One can be beginner and one can be advanced. Regardless, it doesn't matter how much knowledge they have as long as they are living their best life as a human. Basically the Buddha wants us to take this time and this opportunity to take this gift of living as a human being to reach the self-realization of nirvana and basically learning to attain that. And Buddhists are also are very patient. They're very kind. They show a lot of compassion towards others and themselves as well. So there are ordinary persons, learners, and adepts, and I quote this from Trainer, which is from my Buddhism textbook, The Illustrated Guide, page 70. Their status, however, doesn't determine their knowledge, and regardless, their goal is to make the best of human life, as I was saying earlier, and to find purpose and to later reach a higher state. The most important thing is to have a deep understanding of all the eight paths. So it wouldn't make sense if maybe you're pretty solid in like maybe 2 or 3 paths, but you have to understand all of them. And that's really important. So again, the Noble Eightfold Paths are right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right view, and right thought. So the first 4 paths I'm going to be talking to you about, and my partner, Kim, she'll be talking to you about the last 4. So the first one is right speech, samavaka, and right speech simply means to not speak ill of others. So don't lie and always speak the truth. I know that we're all human, we're going to lie from time to time. But if you want to have the right speech, try to reduce lying, even if it's a little lie. Speak the truth and nothing but the truth. Don't gossip or talk behind someone's back. We've done it before, but however, it doesn't serve us well either. Even out of anger, it is not an excuse to talk bad about another. So you can be mad at someone, or simply you're mad at them because you just dislike them. It's not good to just, go up to like 5 people and rant how much you hate that person and how much they're this or they're that. It's really not a good start if you want to have the right speech. And this also includes spreading false rumors and accusations. So if you have the intent to like ruin someone's reputation, that's not cool either. So you want to avoid that. In addition, insults are just as worse as gossiping. We may dislike a person, but being bitter will only lead to bad karma. So even if you're just bitter, even if you're just angry, you want to try to like learn how to control our emotions, learn how to basically problem solve our own emotions. Like if we feel a certain way that's not positive, to steer away from that and learn how to calm ourselves when something happens like that. So communication is key. Be considerate and talk to one another in a kind manner. And having the right speech is the first step. So if you really dislike someone and it's best if you just squash the problem, talk to them, They may not know what you're going through. You may not know what they're going through. Having that respect towards each other will mend things, and everything won't be as bad anymore. So the Buddha divides right speech into four components, and I quote, abstaining from false speech, abstaining from slanderous speech, abstaining from harsh speech, and abstaining from idle chatter. And this is from Bhikkhu, page 43. So the right action, Sammakamata, right action means to do the right thing. Do not kill another, animals and insects. Having the intent to kill is a malicious act. So if you happen to, walk on a sidewalk to the park and you happen to just step on a worm, on a bug, you may not have seen it and you stepped on it and killed it. That's okay. That's an exception. But if you see it and you just, okay, I'm going to kill it, then yes, it is a malicious act. So do not steal is another wrongdoing. This includes money, shoplifting, personal items, and property. And property also goes into homes and vehicles. So if you're at the store, you're at the mall, you see something that you like, but you can't afford it, so you just stick it in your pocket and walk out without paying for it, that's stealing. So that's something that you don't want to do. And also, especially like with vehicles, you see like a radio that you like, breaking into a window and just taking it, I mean, it's not going to do you any good or the person good, especially the other person, because, they had to pay for a new window, they had to buy a new radio, all because, you wanted to steal it. And, stealing things that aren't yours is not the right action. And if someone steals from you, it is unfortunate, and it happens every day. It happens to the best of us. And you may feel vulnerable. However, those who do bad deeds, so those who steal, those who intend to kill will suffer. They will have bad karma. And you would just only put yourself farther from attaining that nirvana. And all you can do is protect your belongings and prevent it from happening again. So if you have your purse stolen, your money's gone, credit cards are gone, everything's gone, the first step you can take is just cancel your cards and report to the police and do everything you can to prevent it from happening again. So also, by doing good deeds, you can volunteer at a shelter, help someone study for an exam, or even donate blood. So you can like volunteer at a food bank. And when I volunteered at a food bank, I packaged rice into bags, and we basically had this whole like bags of rice, and we were gonna like ship it and box it to like people who are less fortunate than us, or people who maybe can't afford food, like they have a house and stuff but they can't afford food. It's always good to just like help out and like help out those who are less fortunate than us. Same thing, studying for an exam. You can also help someone, tutor someone if they're struggling in math, chemistry. Donate blood. If I know there's certain requirements that you have to donate blood, but that's something that you can do by completing that right action. And right action also means self-care. Every human being has their physiological needs. So from eating healthy to exercising, which is really basic, but with Buddhists, they use meditation. So by cleansing stress and away from negative thoughts, meditating helps calm the mind and the body, and taking care of yourself mentally and physically. So in order to feel good about yourself, you have to take care of yourself. And also learn how to love yourself, because in order to care for someone and love someone, you need to care and love yourself back. Well, I would say you have to like love and care for yourself first, and then, but at the same time, these are things that you can do to attain the right action. So again, do not kill, do not steal, and also, if you want to do something good for the community, volunteer. If you want to help someone study for an exam, tutor them, donate blood if someone is really in need, and also take care of yourself, because, that's important. Right livelihood, Samma Ajiva, is right livelihood means to work for a good reason, to earn money without the intent to harm others. And although it may be hard to avoid this, it's only because most companies and businesses are unequal. And for example, corporate or like marketing jobs have the reputation of being stingy or just being unfair. They're very strategic in their profits and services. So, to have a good livelihood, Buddhists are taught to be considerate of others. And this also means to earn a living by doing something that's a natural expression of who you are. And I quote from Davidson. And so, having the right livelihood, you have to be in a profession where it's going to avoid harming someone that's below you. So, if you're like a manager, it's not bad to be a manager, but having the intent to harm them just because they're lower than you, then that's just living in a wrong livelihood. Now, to avoid suffering, here are things that you should not do. Here are jobs and professions that you shouldn't get into if you want to have a right livelihood. This goes into making or selling drugs, so don't be a drug dealer, creating poisons to kill, meat trade, so especially like butchers, Buddhists are very, I wouldn't say conservative, but they avoid anything that has to do with like meat in general. Prostitution, trafficking, same thing. It's benefiting you because okay, you're making money, but you're only harming and worst case scenario, traumatizing women and children because women and children are mainly in the trafficking ring, unfortunately. And yeah, so don't do that. And selling weapons, so if you work at a gun store, it's the same thing, because even though for guns, most of the time it's for protection, there are people out there that buy guns, to just having the intention to kill somebody else, and that's not good either. So right effort, which is Samavayama, it's the fourth path. Right effort means to discipline oneself, preventing negative attitudes and improving our strengths. So we want to steer away from greed, anger, and violence. We may do things that are not wholesome, but there are always room for change. And Buddhists strive to be honest and avoid any temptations. That also goes into like any desires as well. Showing kindness as well as patience, the effort to control our perceptions and reality, and overall this helps us with removing desires, what I just said before. And so basically with the right effort, we want to try to improve ourselves by using our strengths, because I feel like strengths is something that we can all like learn from and also improve, and also try to avoid things that may be not serving us well. So if we're going to a bar just to drink and eventually just lash out at people, then that's not good either. You're not really showing any effort. But also right effort has 4 actions that every Buddhist must follow. Make an effort to prevent the creation of unwholesome states. Unwholesome, same thing as I was saying before, greed, anger, and violence. Making an effort to abandon pre-existing unwholesome states, and make an effort to encourage wholesome states. Make an effort to maintain pre-existing wholesome states as well. So these are things that we want to like try to, like, it may take time, and the first 4 that I just talked about may take time, but at the same time, if we try to show that we are improving and making a change for ourselves, to better ourselves, to have a healthier life, to do good for others, the community, the environment, and ourselves, and it shows that we are actually trying to be that wholesome self and try to change, because ultimately, again, we want to reach that higher state of mind as it called nirvana. So the last 4 paths that we're going to talk about, I'm going to pass this on to Kim, and she will be talking about the last 4 paths and how we can continue to attain and follow the rest of these paths towards nirvana.
Right mindfulness, samasati. Right mindfulness is, as the literal definition of mindfulness suggests, a person's awareness of themselves and surroundings, and the Pali word sati translates to recollection. While the practice of mindfulness is not exclusive to Buddhism, it is a very fundamental part of it. To understand right mindfulness, it is also necessary to understand the 4 factors that go into it: Kaya, Vedana, Siddha, and Dhamma, which translates to body, sensation, heart and mind, and cosmic law respectively. To understand all 4 factors, one must go through a great amount of self-reflection in order to determine if their thoughts and sensations are derived from any sort of negativity, and omit it entirely, as well as develop an awareness of things, oneself, others, and reality. Awareness of things is the awareness of everything materialistic within the environment. However, it is not just being alert of one's surroundings. It's being aware and intrigued enough to observe with all senses and find beauty within it. Awareness of oneself is the awareness of one's body and changes from within. This includes bodily movements, positions, and emotions. A common starting point of meditating would be to first develop the physical aspect of oneself, and then focus on developing awareness for their mind afterwards. Awareness of others is to avoid jumping to conclusions, or judging a person without properly knowing who they are as a person. Lastly, awareness of reality is, in a way, enlightenment itself. It is the perception of everything unclouded by bias. Developing mindfulness heavily involves meditation, which allows a person to see 3 things. It allows the person to be reminded of what their task at hand is and to refocus on it. For example, if the task at hand was to write a book, meditating would allow the writer to cure writer's block and refocus on their book. Next, it allows a person to see things as they should be perceived, meaning unbiased by any sort of past experiences. Lastly, it allows one to see everything as imperfect, temporary, and egoless. In achieving all of this, he or she will become more focused on their surroundings, as well as their own selves, becoming more present and have a less wandering mind. Practicing right mindfulness is not a simple, quick, and easy task, however. It takes a great amount of time and concentration to change life habits, even if training starts from a young age. Right mindfulness essentially calls for each person to develop a mindset very contrary to what the rest of the world has. Right concentration. Sama Samadhi. Right concentration centers around the 4 stages of dhyana. By practicing right concentration and achieving each stage of dhyana, a person is able to feel or experience Buddhist teachings most directly. In the first stage of dhyana, all feelings of passion, desire, and any unhonorable thoughts are abandoned, and only feelings of euphoria and self-consciousness remain. In the second stage, the ability to think critically disappears. By losing that ability, one is able to feel unnerved and therefore calmer, in addition to the emotions left from the first stage. In the third stage, any overwhelming feelings are replaced by complete calmness and balance, called upekkha in Sanskrit. In the fourth and final stage of dhyana, all emotions and momentary sensations disappear, and the person is left with complete calmness and balance. There's a multitude of practices to develop a person's concentration and prepare their mind for when they reach enlightenment. In developing concentration, they also develop mindfulness, which is very commonly mistaken as meditation. However, that is not the case. In the Nichiren school, students concentrate on chanting and powerful meditation, but the most popular type of meditation is when the meditator focuses one's attention on a sole object. Through this type of meditation, they can calm their body and slow down the traffic from within their minds. This is called single-pointed concentration. Right understanding, samadhi. Right understanding is arguably one of the biggest keys to understanding Buddhism. Because right understanding centers around the acceptance of the three categories of dukkha. Du meaning difficult, and ka meaning empty. The first category is dukkha, which roughly translates to suffering or pain. This encompasses all sorts of suffering, ranging from physical pain to emotional pain. For example, aging, birth, sickness, death, failure to protect what's important, and any feelings from undesirable outcomes are all examples of dukkha. The second category is viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change, which is the sadness that comes from knowing that any kind of happiness can be lost or taken away, no matter what kind of setting one may live in, whether in this universe or not. Nothing can remain forever, and it is bound to the changes of its environment. Pleasurable emotions are fleeting, and anything that is alive will eventually die off. The third category is sankhara dukkha, or the all-pervasive suffering of conditioning. This is the most discreet, yet most present form of suffering, and is typically caused by arrogance, anger, pride, and greed. This all-pervasive suffering is described as the suffering that comes from just being alive. It is the suffering of never being quite satisfied with one's surroundings and environment, no matter how luxurious it may be. By taking all this suffering into consideration, one can understand that life is full of all sorts of dukkha. And in learning and accepting that all happiness is temporary, one can be liberated from holding expectations that can potentially lead to disappointment. The moral of right understanding is that there is no point in pursuing something that has the potential to harm oneself. Right intention, samma sankappa. When Siddhartha was meditating under the Bodhi tree, he found that all his emotions could be divided into two categories. He put desires, ill will, and harmfulness in one category that would turn him away from nirvana, and renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness into the other that would turn him towards nirvana. Right intention is described by the Buddha in three parts. The first being the intention of renunciation, which counters the intentions of desire. In this intention, one must learn how to turn away from desires that will only grant momentary happiness, such as riches and overindulgences, because they are the root of all suffering. In practicing the intention of renunciation, emotions of greed are displaced, as there's no way for greed and renunciation to coincide. The second part is the intention of goodwill, which counters the intention of ill will. This is the intention of rejecting all thoughts and emotions that come from anger. However, expelling or repressing these emotions is not an effective way of dealing with it. By losing one's temper, they have the potential to inflict harm on the people surrounding them, which in turn induces resentment and retaliation. An eye for an eye makes the world go blind. Repressing these emotions are just as harmful. The only difference is that the harm is directed towards themselves in the form of depression and self-hate. These emotions cause irrationality and a tendency to lash out violently. According to the Buddha, the best way to deal with these emotions of ill will is to practice metta. Metta roughly translates to friend, but the meaning itself is much more than just treating someone as a friend. Metta is a very intense feeling of unconditional love that is projected in the form of concern for the well-being of another. But it is not to be confused with a feeling of obligation. The last of the three is the intention of harmlessness, which is centered around karuna, meaning endless compassion, and it counters the intention of harmfulness. A way to develop karuna through meditation is to listen to the sorrows of someone who is already suffering and imagine being in that sorrowful person's shoes. Naturally, feelings of empathy or sympathy, as well as the wish to be free from the suffering, would be induced. In order to practice and develop compassion, the same wish on oneself must also be wished upon others. Eventually, when a great amount of compassion has been created, it is then fair for one to contemplate on those living joyously. Despite their seemingly happy lives, it is understood that they are guilty of some sort of evil, and know that they will eventually suffer under karma. The karuna and metta from within cause one to worry even for them. In conclusion, while he was still on his search for enlightenment, Siddhartha turned away from all indulgences and even necessities, causing his health to decline. After realizing that such efforts were futile, he practiced the middle way and meditated under a Bodhi tree. There, he realized true enlightenment and founded Buddhism. He found that rather than blind faith or harsh self-criticism, true enlightenment comes from being satisfied with oneself and their environment, learning to let go of hate and love unconditionally, while remaining distant. Thank you.